Welcome to Optimal Game State. This is the last of the 4 Bladeborn warbands that were released in November White Dwarf. These are the Gorechosen of Dromm. This warband has 3 fighters that are all parts of the Blades of Khorne Bloodbound. So they join the Blood Warriors, Bloodreavers, and fun heroes like the Slaughterpriest. There are already 2 Bladeborn warbands for this faction. We've already got Magor's Fiends and Garrick's Reavers. Remember that while you do need to take the leader, Dromm in this case, as an ally to get access to fighters in Chaos warbands, you don't have to worry about that if you're taking it into their main warband, so in this case the Bloodbound. So if you want to just take the Gore Hulk as a normal fighter without taking Dromm, that is perfectly fine. We do have 3 fighters. We can see them on the plot that they're all pretty expensive. Points are 150 to 225, and they're all doing damage of 5 or better. That's not near the top of the curve for their points though, but it is still a lot of damage. When it comes to wounds, these fighters are all super chunky. That's probably around 24 for Harax and all the way up to 36 for the Gorehawk. So it is going to take a lot of killing to get these fighters down. There are 2 abilities from the Bloodborn that all these fighters can use. The Warband's reaction is Khorne's Dew, which you trigger before dice are rolled for melee attack against the warrior. Misses do 2 damage to the attacker, but crits will do an extra point of damage to the defender. So this is going to be better if your warrior is tough, because it's more likely that the attacker is going to miss. It is very similar to the universal reaction counter, but it does more damage when they miss, at the risk of taking a little bit more damage when they crit. You're unlikely to be using this ability though, as it does cost an action, and these chunky boys are probably going to get a lot more work done with their actual attack. But if you think they're going down, you can get a little bit of revenge damage in. The second ability is a double, Blood for Blood God. It is one of my favorite style of abilities. If you manage to kill someone, you can use this double to get a free move or a free attack. You're already trying to kill things, and this warband should be pretty good at it, so it's basically a bonus action for a double, although not always when you want it. The White Dwarf magazine did also list Bloodbound and Blood Boil abilities, but it did mess up the rune marks on those and left out the hero rune mark and some of the others. So if you do have the magazine, please keep that in mind. The leader of this warband is Dromm, Wounder of Worlds. He is undercosted for his wounds, but overcosted for his weapon. His average damage is 5, but you'd really like to push a little bit closer to 8 for 200 points. He does have reach on that weapon, which is always good to see though. His special ability is a quad, and as quads are unreliable, you can almost stop reading at that point. This one's a little bit complicated to use though. You pick 2 visible points. It'll either be 2 board corners or 2 objectives. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like you can mix them. Then you draw a 1mm line between those points and do damage equal to the ability to anything touching that line, friend or foe. It's a nice idea, but I don't know, it seems very unreliable. In theory, if you did get a quad 6 turn 1 and can see the corners of your opponent's deployment, you could do 6 damage to all of their fighters on that deployment line. Chances of all that lining up though are pretty slim. Luckily, Dromm also has a list of other abilities that come from the main warband. The first is Bloodbind. This is a classic double of the Slaughterpriests. You pick an enemy within 8 inches and force them to make a bonus move directly towards you, a number of inches equal to the ability. So it's a harpoon-like effect. This is kind of like making a bonus action, as you can use double and then attack your target. But it's also a little bit more flexible. You can pull a target off an objective, which could be game-winning. If you have another friendly near, they'll also be able to benefit from the target now being in melee range. That this is a double lets you get a little creative as well, as the doubles tend to have value options. And the right value will let you pull the target into Dromm's reach, but outside of their melee. Blood Boil, the next ability, is a straight damage triple. You pick a target within 8 inches, roll dice equal to the ability, and for each 4+, you do D3 damage. You could cap out at that dream 18, but you could just as easily do 0 damage. To quantify that, each dice on average is probably going to do 0.75 damage. I feel that's a decent amount. Last, we have the triple Lord of Skulls. Again, we have the requirement of getting a kill in, and this ability adds 1 to the attacks of friendly fighters within 6 inches of Dromm. This will work best with fighters who have big damage and low numbers of attacks, or where you've got a ton of fighters who will benefit from it. So, overall, some good abilities, great wounds, and decent damage. Unfortunately, all the Dromm specific abilities are underwhelming, and for 10 points cheaper, you can actually get Slaughterpriest with Blood Baited Axe, which does slightly more damage and still has reach. The big guy in the group is the Gorehulk. In this case, he's actually a little undercosted based on raw stats. The 36 wounds you would expect to cost about 300 points, while the weapon profile is about 220, so almost spot on. For this warband, that is comparable to Korgrath, who has less wounds and 1 less toughness at 20 points cheaper. The Gorehulk is coming in with 8.6 damage, which is pretty stunning. The Korgrath comes out ahead with 10 average damage, although that is versus T4, and once you look at T5, the Gorehulk comes out on top. So let's look at the abilities. The Korgrath has a double that might do some damage at 6 inches. It's kind of that. The Gorehulk gets the double overhead smash. You need to fall at least 3 inches to trigger its ability. That means your opponent gets to pick a position within 2 inches of the falling point, and there's a chance of taking some impact damage. The benefit is you get to roll dice equal to the ability, and each 4+ does 3 damage to someone within 1 inch. So on average, that's going to be 1.5 damage per dice. So it's going to be tricky to use. You probably want to fall near the start of your movement, so you'll be positioned, but then you can adjust for that. And then it should do a decent amount of damage after that. Most importantly, it does feel like you're jumping from the top rope of a wrestling cage match, which is awesome. Last in the crew, we have Skullgrinder Herax. At 155 points, he is the cheapest of the lot. An average damage is 5, which is a little low for the points, but 24 wounds are well above it. You can, of course, get more damage for less, so we're hinging this a little bit on the ability. In this case, it's Chains of Blood, a triple that will add half the ability to the range characteristic. It doesn't actually round the value, which is quite interesting, and in this case it's fine, because you can measure half an inch. So this is going to push the melee range up to 1.5 to 4 inches. Now that isn't massive, but it is something, and it will last for the full activation, so you can get the 2 attacks out of it. It's nice, but I'm not impressed. We could instead go for the Ratmonger, who's going to do the same average damage, but already has the reach of 2. And that's 1 less toughness and 4 less wound, but 15 points cheaper. Most importantly, you don't have to waste a triple to get that reach. And that's the Warband. Just 3 fighters. The models are awesome. They're a really unique twist on the usual style while still keeping it all pretty Khorne. I feel that Dromm has some strong Aztec vibes, the Gorehulk maybe has a bit of a Mexican wrestler thing going on, and Herax, well, I don't know what's going on with Herax, but it's provocative. That said, we could run a Slaughterpriest, a Korgrath, and a Ratmonger for a chunk cheaper and end up with something similar. I do really like the Gorehulk. He is a decent replacement to the Korgrath if you're running your Khorne Warband. You do get more wounds and toughness, and notably the Gorehulk has more damage against toughness 5. He might justify taking Dromm in another Chaos Warband, because otherwise you can't get access to Korgrath, but you can get access to Gorehulk. They're pretty expensive, so it is going to be a chunky combo, but it might be a fun piece to play with. I don't think I'm going to be rushing out to pick up this Warband. If you already have them, or if you're a fan of the Blades of Khorne, I do think they're a really nice option to have. They're very flavorful, the models look great, and they have some cool abilities. Maybe I could see the Gorehulk in some competitive lists. I don't think I'm going to see Dromm or Herax there, but that is fine. Not all of our lists need to be super competitive. Sometimes you just put some fun stuff together to have some cool games. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible 2-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.